The evening sun fell gently over the small African village, turning the mud huts golden, and the sound of children's laughter echoed in the distance. Amina stood at the edge of the narrow dirt path, looking toward Musa, the man everyone said was too simple. He wore the same faded shirt he had worn last week, carried firewood on his shoulder, and greeted her with the same warm smile that never seemed to change. To her it was boring. Too plain. She craved excitement, shining clothes, and the fast life she had heard about in the city. "Look at him," she whispered to her friend with a mocking laugh. "He has nothing. No money, no style, no future. Just a smile and a hut." Her friend laughed too, and Musa, though he heard, only lowered his eyes with quiet dignity. He never fought back, never argued, and never pretended to be more than what he was. Amina thought life was waiting for her beyond the village, in the city lights, the crowded markets, the loud music, and the men who wore pressed suits and carried expensive phones. And so when a chance came, she left. She left behind Musa's simple life, his small garden, his wooden stool, and his warm laughter, all in search of something greater. At first the city dazzled her. She walked on wide roads lit with electricity instead of lanterns, she ate meals she had never tasted before, and she wore clothes far brighter than anything she had seen in the village. She laughed at the memory of Musa, thinking, how could I ever have lived in that tiny world when this is the real life? But slowly the shine began to fade. The men who once smiled at her had no time when their pockets were empty. The big houses she admired had cold walls and locked doors. No one stopped to greet her on the street. No one shared food with her the way Musa once did without a second thought. She realized the city's noise was not joy but loneliness in disguise. And on one rainy night, as she sat by herself in a small rented room with no one to talk to, no one to laugh with, she remembered Musa's hut. She remembered the sound of his gentle voice telling her stories by the fire, his hands offering her roasted corn, his smile when she mocked him, a smile that never carried anger. Her heart twisted with a longing she had never felt before. She had laughed at his simple life, but now, in her brokenness, she craved it more than anything. The village evening was calm, the kind where the sky burned orange before falling into purple shadows. Musa sat outside his mud hut, sharpening a piece of wood to fix his fence. His words were always plain, never dressed in fancy expressions, never wrapped in promises he could not keep. "Life is simple, Amina," he would often say. "We work, we eat, we thank God. That is enough." But to Amina, his words felt like emptiness. She wanted poetry, declarations, and speeches that could move her heart like the stories in the radio drama she listened to at night. Whenever Musa spoke with his quiet tone, she laughed. "Is that all you have to say?" she would mock, shaking her head. "Other men speak like rivers and you are like a dry well." Musa only smiled, never offended. His plain words were not meant to impress, they were meant to comfort. When he told her, "I will bring water tomorrow, don't worry," he brought it. When he said, "You will not go hungry while I am here," she never did. But Amina wanted more than truth, she wanted charm. One day, a man from the nearby town visited the village. His clothes were neat, his shoes polished, and his tongue smooth as honey. He spoke to Amina in ways Musa never did. "You deserve more," he said. "You should not waste your youth in silence. Come, I will show you life." His words sparkled, and Amina, tired of Musa's plainness, was drawn to them. She began spending less time listening to Musa's calm voice and more time chasing the new man's flattering promises. Whenever Musa tried to speak, she interrupted him with a sigh. Always the same words. "Can't you say something beautiful for once?" But then the days changed. The man from town left as quickly as he had come. His promises evaporated like mist under the sun. Amina was left with silence, but not Musa's gentle silence. This was the silence of loneliness, the silence of being ignored, the silence that echoed in empty nights. She walked past Musa's hut one evening and for the first time he did not greet her. His lips stayed shut, his eyes fixed on the ground. No words came from him, not even the plain ones she once mocked. And in that silence she felt her chest tighten. She remembered the weight of his simple sentences, the way they held truth, the way they steadied her when life shook. Now without them the world felt unbearably empty. She realized too late that his plain words had been her anchor, her comfort, her unseen shield. And in the silence he left behind, she longed for every word she once laughed at. The little clay house stood at the edge of the village, its walls cracked from the sun, its roof patched with straw. To outsiders it looked fragile, too simple to hold any dreams. But inside, Musa and Amina had once built a quiet life. Every morning Musa rose early, lit a small fire, and warmed water for her tea. He tended the goats, fetched water from the well, and whistled softly as he worked. The home was modest, yes, just 2 rooms, a mat for sleeping and a wooden stool for sitting. But it was filled with something invisible yet powerful: peace. Amina, however, did not see it that way. She envied the girls who lived in bigger houses, with radios that played songs all day and men who brought them gifts from the town. "Why must I live in this hut?" she often complained, her eyes scanning the bare walls. "Other women sit on sofas, wear shoes from the city, and eat food from tins. And me? I sit on a mat and eat porridge every day." Musa would smile, never defensive. "It is not much," he would say gently, "but here we have no hunger, no quarrels, no fear. Peace is greater than riches." But his words felt like excuses to Amina. She wanted more than peace, she wanted glitter. So, when a chance came, she left. She followed a cousin to the bustling town, where lights burned long after sunset and shops overflowed with things she had only dreamed of. At first, her heart soared. She wore bright dresses, tasted sweet sodas, and walked streets crowded with music. She thought she had finally escaped her prison of a modest home. But slowly, cracks appeared in the glittering world. The cousin's house was crowded, noisy with quarrels. Neighbors shouted over small matters. Locks had to be checked twice at night because thieves prowled the streets. In the day, the market tempted her with colors and noise, but no one shared anything freely. Smiles hid deceit. Words carried weightless promises. Amina often returned to bed exhausted, her heart strangely heavy. And one evening, as she sat alone on the edge of her mattress, she remembered Musa's hut. She remembered how the wind whispered gently through its straw roof, how Musa's laughter filled the silence, how she could fall asleep without fear. That tiny house she once mocked suddenly appeared in her memory like a palace, not of gold or marble but of peace. The realization burned inside her. She had left behind the very thing the city could never give. The dusty road of the village stretched endlessly under the golden light of evening. Musa walked slowly, carrying a bundle of firewood on his back, his shirt damp with sweat. He had little to offer, only his 2 hands, his honesty, and a heart that beat with quiet devotion. Yet, when he looked at Amina, he believed it was enough. "Amina," he told her once, his voice calm but steady, "I may not have riches, but with me you will never be alone. I will stand by you in hunger and in health. I have nothing grand, but my warmth will keep us alive." But Amina had other dreams. She was tired of cracked walls, mud floors, and meals of plain porridge. In the marketplace, she had seen women dressed in fine cloth, their fingers sparkling with rings. She longed for that life, for the glitter she believed was happiness. So when a wealthy trader from the town began to notice her, speaking to her with a polished tongue and promising her a life of comfort, she turned away from Musa's simple heart. "What will I do with your warmth?" she laughed one evening when Musa spoke of their future. "Warmth cannot buy bread, cannot build a house, cannot give me the life I deserve." Musa's eyes dimmed, but he did not argue. He only lowered his head and whispered, "One day, you will know that wealth can fill a room but it cannot fill a heart." Soon after, Amina left with the trader. Her life changed in an instant. She wore dresses of silk, ate food brought from distant lands, and lived in a house with polished floors. At first, she felt triumphant, finally free of the dust, finally shining like the women she envied. But days turned into weeks, and something strange crept into her life. The trader was generous with money but cold in spirit. His voice rarely softened. His eyes were always calculating. When she laughed, he barely looked up. When she cried, he told her to be quiet. The house was big, but every corner echoed with emptiness. One night, as she sat at the edge of the large bed, dressed in fine clothes yet trembling with loneliness, she thought of Musa. She remembered the way his rough hands had gently passed her roasted corn, the way his laughter warmed the nights when the lantern flickered, the way his simple words carried comfort deeper than poetry. Her tears fell, staining the silk she had once desired so much. For the first time she understood. She had chosen wealth over warmth, and though her pockets were full, her heart was starving. The smell of roasted maize drifted through Musa's hut as he handed a plate to Amina. The meal was plain, just porridge, beans, and roasted corn. Amina wrinkled her nose, laughing softly. "Is this all you ever have to give? Other men bring meat, rice, spices. You give me a bowl of beans." Musa only smiled. "It is not fancy, but it is honest. It will fill your stomach, and I cooked it with care." But Amina wanted more. She dreamt of feasts in the town, of tables full of steaming dishes. When she finally left the village for the city, she tasted those meals: rich meat, sweet drinks, colorful plates. At first, she laughed at the thought of Musa's porridge. But months later, as she sat in a rented room with no money and no one to share food with, the silence around her grew heavy. She bought bread from the street, tasteless and cold. She ate alone, no laughter, no warmth, no hand passing her a plate with love. And in that emptiness she realized she craved the very beans she once mocked, because they had been flavored not with spices, but with Musa's care. 2. She called him ordinary, but his absence made life empty. Musa was never a man of surprises. He woke early, worked in the fields, returned home and told Amina simple stories of his day. To her, it was all too ordinary. "You are so plain," she told him once. "Other men bring excitement. You bring routine." But when she left, chasing a life of adventure, she discovered the cost of excitement. The men she met in the city spoke sweetly but disappeared quickly. The days were noisy but shallow. Nights were silent but heavy with loneliness. One evening she returned to her empty room and sat on the bed. No one asked about her day. No one cared if she ate or not. And in that silence she remembered Musa's voice, plain, ordinary but steady, always there. It was then she realized, his ordinary had been the very thing that made life full. Without him, everything felt unbearably empty. Musa's home was small, built of mud and straw, with a roof that sometimes leaked when the rain was heavy. Amina often laughed at it. "How can you call this a home? Look at the cracks, the broken stool, the patched roof." She dreamt of mansions, tall houses with shining floors. And when she left with a wealthy man, she finally lived in one. But soon she realized the truth. The mansion's walls were cold, its silence sharp. She could not laugh freely, could not rest without fear. One stormy night, she sat in a corner of that great house, trembling, longing for the tiny hut where Musa's voice once calmed her and his fire kept her warm. The hut she had mocked now seemed like the only true shelter she had ever known. Musa's hands were rough, scarred from farm work, darkened by the sun. Amina looked at them and sneered. "Look at you. Other men have soft hands. Yours are rough as stone." But those same hands had built her a stool, fetched water, carried firewood, and shielded her from the rain. She left, chasing men with polished hands and golden rings. At first, she admired them, until she realized those hands never reached for her when she cried, never worked for her comfort, never held her with care. One night, alone and frightened in the city, she remembered Musa's calloused hands wrapping a blanket over her shoulders. And she wept, realizing she longed for the safety she once mocked. The village was calm. Birds sang at dawn, and evenings were filled with crickets and laughter around the fire. Musa loved that peace. But Amina grew restless. "This village is too quiet," she said. "There is nothing here. I want the noise of the city." So she left. The city dazzled her, cars, markets, music, and voices everywhere. But soon she discovered its restlessness. People shouted, argued, rushed. Nights echoed with sirens and quarrels. Even in her bed, she could not find peace. Her body grew tired, her heart heavy. And in the sleepless nights, she remembered the quiet rhythm of Musa's village, the only place where her soul had ever truly rested. Musa's promises were small. "I will bring water tomorrow. I will fix the fence before night. I will make sure you never go hungry." Amina laughed. Such tiny promises. Other men speak of kingdoms, of wealth, of forever love. And you promise goats and fences. But he always kept his word. When she left for grander dreams, she heard countless promises, of riches, of gifts, of undying love. Yet those promises vanished with time. Words spoken with charm were broken with ease. Alone at last, she thought of Musa's voice, plain, steady, but true. Every small promise had been fulfilled. And she wept, realizing his simple promises were the only ones that ever carried truth.